Welcome everyone to today's webinar, What's New with Oracle Integration Cloud Gen 3. My name is Nikki. I'm a Marketing Event Manager for the Developer Initiative here at Oracle. And today we're excited to show you the latest updates in Oracle Integration Cloud Gen 3. And today's webinar will be presented by Wilson Randall, a Senior Cloud Engineer. Without further ado, I'll pass it to Wilson.
So, topic material of today's presentation and walkthrough and demo is going to be some of the coverage of new features of Oracle Integration Cloud Gen 3. In particular, today we're going to be talking about some of those key topics in 24.06 release of OIC Gen 3. Towards the end, there's also a couple of bonus that's going to be in 24.08, but that's going to be a future release. Today, we're talking about 24.06. But my name is Wilson Randall. I'm a cloud solution engineer here at Oracle, mainly covering integration, application integration, Oracle Integration Cloud, OIC, as I'll refer to it in short. But happy to be here and happy to present. So just a quick agenda of what I'm going to be covering and what we'll be covering from our side today. So just going to align everyone on Oracle Integration Cloud, get everyone on the same page, just a little overview of OIC, of Oracle Integration Cloud at first. Then we'll get into the kind of the core presentation of those new features that I want to highlight, 24.06 release in OIC. I'll show some of those in action, where we'll actually look at some use cases in OIC. And then towards the end, we'll also do a little intro of Virtual Code Innovate, of a program that's offered by Oracle. But without further ado, let's hop into it. So just at a high level of what Oracle Integration Cloud is, and to give some context, I know some folks, based on that poll, are new users to Oracle Cloud, have not used it. And I know some folks are experienced users of Oracle Integration Cloud and are familiar with the services that are offered on OCI. But just to recap and just to give a little high-level summary, so Oracle Integration Cloud is a cloud-based application platform that's offered on Oracle Cloud. It is the application integration platform that's preferred for basically anything Oracle, but also a number of third-party applications as well. Being by nature of being an application integration platform, there is a wide variety, wide scope of use cases that it covers. Basically, anything that has an API, anything that has an adapter, a web service, some touch point, some integration touch point of some sort is fair game for OIC, for Oracle Integration Cloud. This is really a whole fully fledged integration platform, allows your applications and services to talk to each other, can communicate not only with Oracle applications, but third party. And not only applications, it can talk to databases, it can write and read files, do some file-based operations, talk to other cloud services on other clouds. It's an integration platform with again, a very wide scope of what it can touch and what it can do. It doesn't have to be just cloud. So Oracle Integration Cloud can talk to on-premise applications and systems too. And then there's also a few kind of extensions, I like to think of them, but other kind of sub platforms that are included in OIC, those being Visual Builder, which is a low-code application development platform, process automation for kind of human workflow approval. If you need to bring in, a manager to approve or reject something, take different paths based on that. And also B2B for, EDI-based integrations. And there's a file server that's also included in OIC. But just wanted to make you aware of kind of what OIC is and where it fits in the cloud marketplace. Lots of adapters out of the box, and these adapters are really the core of the connectivity in the integration platform. So, like I said before, Oracle connects with quite a wide variety of services, whether they be Oracle or non-Oracle. But obviously, Oracle connects very well with Oracle. Pretty much anything under the Fusion umbrella is connectable. A lot of on-premise applications, EBS, JDE, other applications connectable. Databases, autonomous database, Snowflake even is connectable. And then there's a lot of technology connectivity adapters that we also use. So if, say, there's not a purpose-built adapter, no problem. If it's got a REST API, SOAP web service, file-based interface of some sort, we can connect to it through those. And primarily what we're going to be talking about today is part of the application integration portion of OIC, which is the core functionality. It is kind of the core integration platform when you think integration, when you think applications talking to applications, the actual orchestration of these workflows, the actual connectivity. It's going to be part of this application integration umbrella that we're going to be talking about. So it's just some common use cases, and then we'll dive right into the main content. But some common use cases are going to be something like a synchronization of data across applications. Let's say you've got e-business suite, you're moving to ERP cloud, but you still need there to be synchronization while you're making that move. Or maybe you're running both in parallel. So you need to sync some purchase orders, you need to sync some invoicing data between the two. Integration cloud and have control of that data that's moving across Oracle Integration Cloud. Some other things, database operations, whether they be small form transactions where maybe you're inserting some data into a table from an application. Maybe this is a database that's part of an underlying application infrastructure, using it as kind of your main application database. OIC can connect to a number of databases, both Oracle and third party. And then we see a lot of other file-based integrations as well. File integrations very common in OIC, B2B type integrations, application extensions, so kind of being the back end to a front end visual builder application that you might extend in Oracle Fusion. And a lot of these are adapter use case driven. You bring a requirement to the table, and then we see how we can actually build that out in OIC, in Oracle Integration Cloud. Little preface before we go into these new features in 24.06. A lot of it will be in the context of projects in OIC Gen 3. So wanted to align first on what projects are. You may have experience working with them, you may be already using them, or you may be completely new to projects. But when OIC was upgraded in Gen 3, one of the big ticket items that was added from Gen 2 was these projects. Now, what are projects? So previously in OIC, all of your integrations, connections, lookups, libraries, etc., were kind of all in one place. They're all in OIC, but there was with projects, it's a little bit easier. It's a more streamlined interface to organize and kind of streamline the development process with a better organization of those integration artifacts. So all of your integrations, connections primarily, but also your lookups, your libraries, and looking forward, events, pub sub events are all now going to be under kind of one logical container or one logical bucket, you could think of it. So only these integrations will have connectivity to the connections in here. You can also share connections across projects. But it gives you a higher level of control, it gives you a more organized process for development. So everything's not, just jumbled together in one big bucket. It's more organized. There's additional control, so you can implement role-based access control. So if you wanted to give, a subset of integration developers access to a particular project and not access to a second project, you can do that now in projects. You can deploy in bulk. So if you have, a set of 4 or 5 integrations that make up a single project, You can now activate, deactivate those in bulk. You no longer have to do it piecemeal. And then monitoring and observability is also more streamlined as well. So you don't have to go into the monitoring observability interface and look at all of the integration runs in your integration environment. You can focus and just drill down to the integrations that are in this particular project. So it's a way of compartmentalizing and better controlling the development and design and actual runtime of these integrations. Better way to organize and streamline that whole process. So that being said, let's get into the new features now. And some that I want to highlight, we'll start off first with events in projects. Now, events in OIC Gen 3 were added as a pub sub model. So these events are, say, if you had an integration scenario where you wanted to collect an event or generate an event, these are custom events. You define what data, what that data looks like, what fields you want to have. But basically, if you want to collect an event and publish it to multiple downstream integrations, so really thinking about designing a one-to-many type integration design, you do that through events. Events previously were not part of projects, but now we have support for events and projects. A few notes on these. It's the pub sub model as I just described. The same service limits are applicable to events as they are in projects. Same service limits apply as if they were not part of projects. So things like these events being JSON based, maximum of 20 subscriber integrations to these, and so on. Events in that project only available to that project. If you need to make them available to other integrations, you need to make them. You need to create those need to create those events in other places in the integration instance. So this is big. Next one is this design time dependency view. So in projects in OIC, previously what you had to do is you were just looking at your list of integrations, you were looking at your list of connections, your list of libraries and lookups. And sometimes the more integration artifacts, the more integration components that you added into the mix, the more difficult it got to actually visualize or actually think about what's talking to what in that particular project. So you might have, 10, 20 integrations, 10, 20 connections that go with those. It was kind of hard to think about, is this FTP connection being used in this integration, or is my HCM REST adapter, am I actually using that in the new hire export integration? What this design time dependency view is doing is it's actually going and fetching the metadata of all of your integration components in a particular project and putting it in a canvas where you can look at the components, look at the relational aspect. You can drill down into the different components. So say if you only wanted to look at the integrations and see what connections they were talking to, look at a particular integration, allows you to go in and drill down and really think about the design of all of your components in this project. So very useful when you are designing and looking at, a larger number of integration components in a single project. And we'll take a look at this as well. So just as I said before, you're looking at the relational aspect between those components. So we're looking at integrations and connections primarily, but also the lookups and libraries and events. Again, events are new, but you can look at where those fit into your integration design or your project design as well. So continuing on here, we also have activity stream and viewing this by activity duration. So this is very useful in a variety of circumstances, and this is more on the observability and monitoring side. But previously, when you were going through and activating and running an integration, all of those events or all of the actions that occurred in the integration were time-stamped. So you could view, exactly at what time, what down to the millisecond, down to the second, each part of that integration was run. So you could kind of do some calculations without a calculator and see, how long each component was taking. But that did not give you exactly the granularity that you needed, especially in terms of looping. But this does. So this is all automated now. What it's going to do is when you actually activate and run an integration, it's going to tell you the total time it took to run, of course, that's baseline, but it will also tell you how long each component took to run. It will tell you how long each loop took to run. So if you're, going through a for each loop and, doing some line by line processing or object by object processing, it will tell you how long each iteration of that loop took. It works for while loops too, as you can see on screen. Will tell you the percentage of the runtime that that particular action took. So, line 452 took, 1%. Maybe my line 453 took 15%. So, something's going on with that line. I need to go into that integration, diagnose some issue with that. So it really is another layer of granularity, another layer of visibility that this gives you. I would say this is quite useful if you're in two scenarios, primarily if your integration is running through a lot of loops that are non-uniform, especially. So like if one loop takes particularly more time to process than another, but also in cases of kind of more complex integrations where you might not have a good handle, or you might not have visibility into exactly what part of the integration is taking longer to run or might need some attention to another. But this actually gives you that now and kind of automates that process of seeing what's taking the most amount of time to process in the integration. So very useful visibility and monitoring statistic here. And you can drill down in the individual loop level as well, as I just declared earlier. Another point here. This one is very useful, more of a convenience feature, but you can refresh endpoints within your integrations now, so you don't have to, back out of the integration and click the dots and then refresh endpoints or refresh connections. You can just do it in a single click in the integration now. So that's just another convenience feature that's added here. We got some bonus features here. Now, these are a disclaimer that these are going to be in future release of OIC. These are not in 24.06. These are in 24.08. So this is going to be in the future. That being said, a couple of cool things that are coming down soon is, first of all, this logging analytics quote unquote insight dashboard. So if you are a user of Oracle Integration Cloud Gen 2, you might remember of a feature called Insight. This is going to be kind of a new form or a relation to that. It's not going to be exactly the same thing, but it will give you kind of the same metrics, the same functionality that you'd expect for something like that. But this is going to be an out-of-the-box dashboard from OCI Logging Analytics. And if you're using logging analytics today for looking at, in particular, activity stream information coming from OIC, it's going to be in the same logging analytics tool. And this is going to do things like give you a higher level of visibility and monitoring and pull various metrics from your integration. Kind of gives you a little bit more granularity into what's actually happening in your integrations. So just wanted to mention this one as well. Another bonus is the healthcare flavor of OIC. Now this is not yet released again. This is 24.08. But if you're in the healthcare industry looking at healthcare integration interfaces and looking to integrate those, there will be support for, in particular, HL7 and FHIR interfaces, and those will be integratable in OIC Gen 3, the healthcare flavor of that. So this is something that we're also very excited about. More details to follow on both of these, but just wanted to put those on the radar. So let's shift gear for a minute on that. Enough slides. Wanted to first put on and introduce kind of a sample use case that we'll look at as kind of our guinea pig use case for looking at some of these new features in OIC Gen 3 and actually show you rather than tell you. But let's say we've got a use case of something like this. This is a what I would figure is a standard or a typical use case that you might build in OIC. So we've got a process where we want to export new hires. We're a company, we're building, we're growing. We've got a lot of new hires coming in. We need to not only keep this data in Oracle HCM, which is going to be, our primary data store, our primary application to host that data, but we also want to export that for safekeeping, for compliance, for, analytics purposes downstream. I'm going to need an integration platform in order to achieve that, to actually pull that data. So we've got Oracle Fusion HCM. We're going to pull our new hire, export them using the HCM adapter in Oracle, in OIC in an integration. It's going to come as JSON. I'm going to do some mapping. I'm going to do some translation, and then I'm going to write that into an external file in an SFTP server. Let's say it's writing to my OIC Gen 3 SFTP server. In addition, I might synchronize that with a table or multiple tables in Oracle ADW, Autonomous Data Warehouse, and map that to a particular schema that I've gotten there. And maybe I've got an analytics platform on top of that. So this is what I would consider, not a complex integration, but not a simple one either. It's got some moving parts here with the requirements on pulling the data from HCM. It's got requirements on writing to not only one, but two external destinations, an SFTP, an Autonomous Data Warehouse. And it's also got this mapping and translation component as well. I'm pulling it as JSON from a REST API or a business object, but I need to actually translate that and write it to a file, and I need to write it into a schema at the same time, sitting on a database. So there's some moving parts here, and I'll just kind of use this as a guinea pig integration flow. So enough slides. Let's get into the demo now. All right, so I'm logged in to the Oracle Integration Cloud console here, and I've already got everything set up. So let's start out in projects, and let's look at first the events in projects. So you can create a new project. I've got one created here. Let's pop into here. So for something like this, projects has been around for a while, so you've got your integrations, your connections, if needed, your lookups and your JavaScript libraries as well. But down here, you can also add events now. So let's say this is a project that I've created for a new hire event. I want to pull some hire information, maybe scheduled integration runs every once in a while to run a report, to push that data or prepare that data. And maybe I want to have this event that will fire off and some downstream integrations will go and then be signaled to take that new hire information once it's been prepared properly. So let's do this. New hire event. It's going to be JSON. XML is also supported, but primarily it's going to be JSON. You define what this event looks like. So this is your event, your kind of custom event in OIC. So you have the rules for that. You write, and let's say maybe it's no, maybe I want to have employee name here. And this is just sample data as a string. Maybe I have employee role here. No, maybe they're a manager. Say that's me. Then maybe a hire date. And let's say that's also a string, but in OIC you can translate different different data formats into string if you need. There's JSON. It's complaining about the format of that. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that event. Perfect. So that event's created. Now in an integration, let's say I've got this integration here. This is invoicing information, but let's say it's a new hire integration. I'll come down here. And at any point in this integration, I can put that event to kind of signal that, it's time for my downstream integrations to consume that event. And then if you create an integration, you can select event driven here. So it's not going to be application or scheduled, which are quite common. And again, just to recap what these mean, application is another application triggering off this integration. This could be something like a business event coming from Fusion. This could be very commonly exposing an integration as a REST endpoint or REST API. Scheduled runs at a certain point of time, but event is what we're after here. So I'll say HCM, new hire event, subscribe to event here, and that's going to pop out interface. I just overwrote that. There you go. Excuse me, one moment. There we go. There we go. So you select your event there. Let's choose that. Let's finish. So basically, when any integration in this particular project, because we're in the project context here, publishes that event, any one of my integrations that I've set up to subscribe to this event will now take that information. And if I drop in a logger here just to inspect the payload coming from that event, da, 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 in the request wrapper here, you see we have the employee name, employee role, and hire date coming off of that event. Again, you can define whatever information you need to put through that event. I just selected, a few sample fields for my employee that I've just hired here. But this could be other metadata. It could be, a job date that you've run or, a job identifier if you need to pull from a different source. A lot of possibilities of what it comes to from this. So yeah, that's covers projects in, events in projects. Wait on. Going into the design time dependency view. Again, if you're looking at something like this, project of this complexity, you might say, oh, I got an integration that's using these three connections. Pretty straightforward to say, hey, I'm using this REST trigger, I'm using REST OAuth, and I'm using this database connection. But once you add more components to the mix, it starts to get a little bit less clear as to what's using what. So in this project here, I've imported this at an earlier date, but this is for a CPQ type project. Now this is going to be like representing a full-blown CPQ integration campaign that my company is running. So here we've got 6 integrations, we've got 4 connections, we've got 5 lookups. There's a lot of different ways that these components could fit together. So up here at the top right, you can see this little kind of branch icon here. That's going to be where we click in order to get to that design time dependency view. Now this, as you can see here, you got all of my integrations, all 6 of them, all 4 of my connections, and then my lookups as well. You can see, say if I wanted to look up, create sales order, you can hover, you can drill down into that particular integration, see what connections it's leveraging, seeing what lookups it's leveraging. So say if you needed to make a addition or edit to this integration, or you needed to make an adjustment to a lookup, for example, you would know exactly then that this integration needs to be updated, needs to be maintained with any changes that were made to that lookup or any changes that need to be made in the mapping, for example, in points of this. So you can filter down to a particular integration. You can filter down to a particular connection, see how that maps out to different integrations. You can filter down to just a particular category of components. So say if you only wanted to look at integrations, or if you only wanted to look at your connections, you can do that as well. But again, this gives you a very easy, kind of straightforward look at what's connecting to what are the relational aspects between integrations, connections, lookups, libraries, and events in this project context, in this project scenario. So another good addition to our project here. And events too. I have not added any events to this particular project, but those would also pop up here as well. You can expand or collapse this. So, and if there's any updates, if any other folks are adding to that, you can update that data in real time. But very useful. Again, very useful in the design process, and also I would say just personally in like the update process. So if there was any updates to an integration or any updates, like let's say I updated this particular lookup, I would know exactly what integrations that impacted and where I would need to go into those integrations and adjust a mapping or adjust a particular function call to meet that update of that lookup. So very useful in that aspect. So we can close that out. Let's view some activity streams by activity duration now. So again, um, this is the use case in which you have components that are being executed in integration, they're being run. Now, how long does it take for each one of those components or each one of those loops to execute in that particular integration? So in observability, I've got some instances that I ran. I'll put the filter a little bit longer here. So I've got an errored instance. I've got some successful instances. I'll walk you through each one of these. So let's start out with this one, just a happy path. No integration here. So this one is what I would call a normal file-based integration. In this case, I'm reading and writing some files. I'm encrypting them. I'm decrypting them in preparation for sending them downstream or having another system or another integration come and pick up these files. So I'm kind of doing a pre-processing, kind of a pre-file processing use case here. Let's go sideways here. So it's scheduled integration. We run through, we read in our original file, we write it and encrypt it at the same time, and then we read that encrypted data, and then we're writing and decrypting it to another location on this SFTP server. So I can come in here and see activity stream. Now this activity stream should look familiar if you're experienced in OIC, if you've done activity stream logging and monitoring before, but you can come in here and see the wire messages. You can see what data is being processed depending on the tracing level, and you can see they're time stamped here. So you can see I've started it at 8:14 here. It took 128 milliseconds to run the initial schedule run. It took a few seconds to complete the mapping, a few seconds to actually read in the file. But now let's say I want to take a look at another integration. This one is a little bit more involved. I'd say this one is a little bit more complex as to what we're doing. So this is another file-based integration, but this one's going to be now actually going in and chunking a file. In this particular instance, we had a use case where we were feeding in a large file into an application that had a limit on the number of lines or the number of bytes that could be fed in to a particular interface, ingested at one time. So we had to go into our source file and kind of split it up, chop it up based on the requirements of that destination target or destination system. So what we did here is we went in, we had a file sitting on an SFTP server, we read that in. We did a little bit of chunking logic here. So essentially our logic was, every 500 lines or every 1,000 lines, I'm going to split that, make it its own file. We're taking one big file and just chopping it up into smaller ones. That's basically what we're doing here. But there is some particular logic that we had to assign variables to loop through with respect to. So a bit of, complexity with the logic here. And then at the end, once we had chunked out our file, once we had chopped it up, made it, all nice and small for each one of those chunks, we had to loop through and actually feed it into our system here. In this case, we're feeding it into Eloqua. For something like this, would be a really good candidate for actually looking at the time that each component took, the activity duration on each one of these loops and each one of these functions or each one of these actions in OIC. So we can take a look here. To actually get to that view, you're going to hit this little hourglass part here. So here, let me hit back to that. So here we have a look as to how long it took to run. So this invoke read big file when we're reading in the large file, thousands of lines, hundreds of megabytes, really didn't take that long, only a second or so. And then you can see and look how long it took to write each chunk of that file. It's going through the logic, it's splitting up, it's assigning variables. So it looks like it took 650 milliseconds to write that first chunk, and then after that it kind of trimmed down on the performance time. So that gives me some insight. Maybe my initial lines in this file are pretty large, and maybe the later ones are on the smaller side. If I wanted to go in and look at a particular iteration, like if I've identified a particular iteration that's problematic or taking too long to run based on what I've seen there, I can go there. So let's say I want to look at iteration 542 here. I can do that. Um, yeah. And then if I wanted to look at, how long each operation within there is taking to run, can also do that as well. So very useful for that. And that's looking at the first 1,000 runs there, taking about 51% of my processing time. Yeah, that makes sense. I've got another 400 or so, 500 or so. So the whole chunking process here, what I've gained from that is, okay, it's going to take me about 75% of the integration run. It's going to be that. The other 25% is going to be the actual read and assigning and looping through and feeding into Eloqua, into my target system. So yeah, gives you some additional monitoring and visibility and understanding of what's actually happening in the integration here. So very useful feature there. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much for your time today. I know we really appreciate it, all the interest. So thank you. My name is Luis Lopez. I'm a senior cloud engineer here at Oracle. Today we're going to talk about Virtual Code Innovate, what it is, how it can benefit your organization, and kind of what to expect from the program. So many of you may have heard of Legoland, may be familiar if you have children. Maybe you've been there before in the past. Our director has children and would almost every year go with his kids. And out of all the attractions and activities at Legoland, their favorite thing to do was to participate in the Lego Master Build class. During this class, all the kids were given their own clear plastic bag of disassembled Lego pieces without any instructions. And there were adults in the room, in front of the room, pictured in the top right corner, with green shirts, and they're known as Lego Master Builders. So over the course of the event, they worked with these kids on the concept of brick interlocking and how to create smooth surfaces on objects using Lego pieces. And the goal of this class was first and foremost for the kids to have fun, but in a short amount of time, it's for them to learn to build with Legos in a creative environment, using the techniques that they were taught by true experts. Next slide, please. Similarly, Code Innovate is a 5-day online event designed to educate builders on Oracle Cloud while producing a first-pass prototype based on customer-selected business challenges. So over the course of a week, participants from your teams are paired with Oracle engineer to guide them through the best practices and code development. And during this time, they'll ideate on their business challenges, identify tasks to complete, and partner with Oracle to develop a minimum viable product. So whether you're a novice or a pro in Oracle Cloud, Code Innovate is pretty much all about building real solutions for your organization's most pressing use cases. So real world experience. Next slide, please. Basically what we want you to do is bring us your use case ideas, and we'll work together through a structured planning process over the course of the next of at least 3 weeks to kind of qualify your use case and get the necessary resources aligned from each of our organizations, so both from Oracle side and your organization side, so that we can successfully create a prototype. We use a process of cloud coaching to guide you along in user OCI user interface and within the different products and services that we offer. So that way you get the most hands-on experience during your development, your code development. Next slide, please. As an additional point to note, we support builds with many infrastructure and platform services on Oracle Cloud. So not just OIC, but other cloud native services like Kubernetes Engine, Docker, CI/CD pipelines. We also do things with Analytics Cloud, data science, and AI services, chatbots like Digital Assistant, Visual Builder Studio, Visual Builder Cloud, which is a part of Integration Cloud. So many others that we can help with. Most of the times, our use case builds involve multiple services that comprise the entire prototype solution. I make this point because oftentimes our webinars are on a single product or topic, but our team is capable of resourcing specialists within our organization and are, basically to meet any kind of needs that your organization may have. Everything that our team works on is custom built prototype and tailor fitted to fit your use cases. Next slide, please. So you might be wondering what the requirements are for an event such as this. Basically, we require 4 or more developers or builders at the event. And we use the term developers fairly loosely. It could also be business users or end users who would like to be involved in the brainstorming and build process. So anyone who wants to build in the cloud is certainly welcome. We require a 20-hour time commitment, which basically translates to 5 half days. And this is where you'll bring your own use cases that you might want to work on. And we want to work on the things that you want to work on. So there's a really collaborative dynamic here. We also require 3 weeks of lead time, and this ensures that we get the correct resourcing from Oracle and from your organizations. We have a formal cadence meeting, typically that happens once a week for about 30 minutes leading up to the event. And this is to discuss any kind of discovery related to any brainstorming, as well as logistics. And then last but not least, there's no fee for this event. It's a free service that we offer, but you will have a time commitment for both of our teams, as well as any costs associated with the cloud services that you consume during the build process. Next slide. So this kind of wraps things up for the Code Innovate session. But if this is something of interest to you, I'd ask that you please put in the chat your name and email address if you're interested, or if you'd like to send us a request, please send us an email to this email address on your screen. If you have a specific use case in mind, it would be helpful if you included a few sentences to describe kind of what those use cases are, include that in your email, along with the name of your organization. So, and if you have any questions, we're happy to help answer those. So